Alright, troops, Queen Vampy here. You may be wondering why my background is of an old spooky house with a storm and some bats. And that's because today I'm going to do something a bit different. I am going to be doing a review of my favourite horror movies. Well, two of my favourite horror movies, because if I went through all my horror movies, this video would be like 6 years long. Um, and we don't want that. Nobody's going to sit and watch 6 years of me just ranting on about my favorite horror movies. And also the remakes. So, movies that I absolutely loved when I was younger, and remakes that was remade afterwards. Um, so, I might do this, you know, once in a while, guys, because I've always kind of wanted to do this kind of stuff. Um, because as you know, I love horror. I love horror games, and I've always loved horror. And it's a thing that I've got from my mum because my mum used to watch all the old Hammer horror movies, if you remember them. And I used to watch some with her. And I loved like Peter Cushing and Vincent Price and Boris Karloff and all these different characters, the pit and the pendulum and all that kind of stuff. And just these old horror movies that I grew up watching because my mum was a fan of horror movies. My mum's favorite movie is The Thing. You know what I mean? So I definitely get it from my mum. So obviously I was born in 1979. I was nearly an 80s baby because I was born in the end of 1979, but it wasn't to be. So most of my horror movies that I love are either late 70s or um, mid 80s or 90s horror movies, guys. So I'm going to do, when I speak about the remake, if it's a Bandabby Dozy, because I liked it, or a no, because I didn't. So, the first movie that we're going to speak about is Nightmare on Elm Street, which was made by Wes Craven. It was made in 1984. It had a budget of 1.8 million and it ended up making 57 million. But 1.8 million is actually quite a big budget. So it is to have for a movie in that and in that time anyway. Um so I'm sure you all know who Freddy Krueger is, guys. I'm sure you all have seen Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, if you enjoy horror anyway, you will. Um, Nightmare on Elm Street for me was the first horror movie that I watched where I actually loved the villain because Robert Englund plays Freddy Krueger so well. His banter in these movies are just excellent. The way he just taunts them all before he kills them. The scene where he's, counting, but he's cutting off his fingers as he's counting and all this green stuff smarting it, and or the scene where he's walking down an alley and his arms are stretched out and they are like really long and he's scratching his fingernails into the concrete and it's making this noise. And that famous when he's in the boiler room and he's tapping on stuff and he's and you hear that and it's just so good that it's just the suspense in it. You're like, oh my God. So guys, if you don't know, Nightmare on Elm Street is basically about a guy called Freddy Krueger who comes back to get revenge on the parents' kids who killed him by setting him on fire in his boiler room because he was accused of killing children and basically um, get away with it. I don't think they had enough evidence or something like that. No, I had to look this up, guys, because I must have been quite naive when I was younger when I saw this. Um, because somebody said to me that he was actually a child molester. And I was kind of like, no, no, it wasn't in that. Nobody verbally said that in the movie. So I looked it up, and apparently Wes Craven had written this in to the story that he was actually a child murderer and molester. But there was a court case going on at the time where a guy was actually getting done for the exact same thing, and he decided to take it out because he did not want people thinking that Freddy Krueger was basically being written for this guy who was getting done, which it was just coincidence at the timing. Freddy Krueger wasn't written on this guy whatsoever. It was just coincidence. So instead, he basically writ it out the story, but put wee subtle things in to kind of make you know that he was. So I was kind of like, because obviously I was looking into this, guys. I was trying to do my homework before I made this video, and I was like, wow, I never knew that. Never knew that. And I know certain scenes knew that, I think. But see, because these characters who play these teenagers look about 40 half the times, you just don't put two and two, two and get together anyway. So that was the first time I'd heard that. But apparently, yep, it's true. So, um, but I think the movie works either way, even though they didn't put that in the movie. Um, so basically, it starts off with Tina, who at the time I thought Tina was our main character because, and that's the thing about Wes Craven, he always tricks you into thinking a certain person is a main character and then killing her off. Like when he did Scream and Drew Barrymore was in it, and you're like, oh, Drew Barrymore, she's a big star, she's going to live, and then she dies first, and you're like, I wasn't expecting that. But apparently, in that movie, Drew Barrymore was meant to play the lead, but then said to Wes Craven, could she get a smaller part and be killed off because she was going to be doing another movie, and that's why they get Neve Campbell in to actually play the lead. Um. Anyway, that that's just information you might want to know, guys, about Scream. I don't know. Mm. So anyway, um, so back to this. I thought Tina was the main character. She's the first person who starts having the dreams, and she starts telling Nancy about this dream she's having, um, and everybody's just kind of like, yeah, don't worry about it, you know. And I'm not sure if Nancy at that time says, "Oh, I had that dream as well. It was scary." Um, and they're like, "Yeah, you know, having the same dream, same person, blah blah blah, and all that kind of thing." But Nancy was kind of to me like the goody shoes kind of thing. She didn't seem like a main character to me, knowing this anyway. Know how she was first playing her character. So your main characters anyway, you had Nancy and Tina who were best friends, and then you had Glenn who's Johnny Depp. I think this was his first movie, and he is Nancy's boyfriend. And then you have Rod, and Rod is Tina's boyfriend, and he's like the bad boy. And you can clearly tell that he doesn't really want to have anything to do with Glenn and Nancy. He's only kind of hanging about with them because Tina's best pals with Nancy, and he's with her. So, so anyway, she's the one first having experiences, and then um, her and Rod are obviously in the room. They're all at, I think it's Nancy's house. I don't know. They're at somebody's house where the parents are not there anyway, and they're having a sleepover. And I think they're having a sleepover to help Tina because she's so scared. And they says they would be there for her, blah blah blah. She's upstairs with Rod, and obviously they're doing what teenagers do. And then obviously she falls asleep, and Freddy gets her. But the way she dies is absolutely horrific, and I remember it to this day. Her getting dragged up the walls and getting slashed and screaming, and him screaming, Tina, Tina, and I'm like, oh my god, you know. And then she just falls via height onto this bed of blood. splatted him, splatted the walls, and I'm like, oh my god. Um, so then obviously the police comes because Nancy hears it all, and he's off. So then he gets the blame because they were the only ones in the room. And then I was like, so who's the main character? Because Tina's dead now. So then obviously Nancy starts having the dreams. Um, and um, it's so good to see how great these kids look to begin with, but then when they're deprived of sleep, they start looking, pale. Their eyes are red. They're drinking coffee. You see Nancy, and she's starting to drink coffee, but later on, she's actually got the coffee machine in her room. They're taking like caffeine tablets to try and stay awake. She's got cans of, I don't know, I think it was Tab back then. Was it Tab? I'm sure it was, I don't know, it was some sort of can with caffeine, a caffeine drink anyway. It'll not be like, I mean, it's 1984, so it's not going to be like what we had back in the days, like Red Bull and all of that. And she's tanning them. And meanwhile, while this is happening and everybody's kind of going through and having these dreams, Glenn is none the wiser. Nothing's happening to Glenn, so he just thinks everybody's kind of nuts when they're, especially Nancy. He just does not understand the importance of what's happening. So when she's asking him to do things like when she's going to sleep and she asks him to stay awake, to wake her up, to pull her out of dream and all that, he ends up falling asleep because he just thinks she's, you know, imagining it all. Maybe, suffering for something after the death of Tina and all that kind of stuff. Because he didn't get on with Rod, so he just basically thought Rod had done it. Um, so anyway, you have Rod who ends up getting arrested, um, and he ends up in jail, and Freddy kills him in jail, makes it look like he hung himself. So then he's done, and then poor Glenn, poor Glenn, who's none the wiser and actually thinks nothing's going on. Now I remember this scene so well, because it's the 80s guys, and Johnny Depp is wearing this kind of crop top t-shirt back in the day where, guys thought it was cool to wear like belly tops, and he's got like this portable TV, wee white TV that's kind of sitting on him, and he's watching that, and he's got earphones in at the same time, and he's fell asleep in bed, and I think she's trying to phone him to warn him, and the Freddy Krueger's hands come up and basically pull him through the bed, and oh, this blood just shoots up out the bed, and I was like, oh my god, how did they do that? That's amazing. And I remember looking up how they did that, and it was they made a room and they had it all upside down, and they basically just poured stuff through the bed and filled the whole room up like with this stuff that looked like blood. It was amazing how they did it. They put a lot of care into it. Um, so between Freddy Krueger's character, he has just, his banter and everything about him. Even what he's wearing, this like dirty hat, the classic jumper that's got like bits of rips in it, that how horribly burned he is. The even the makeup was amazing. So it was. Um, just basically how he acts, and his glove, the fact that he's got that glove with the knives in it, and it shows you him making it at the beginning, how he's making it and stuff like that. um and obviously the song and the dreams where they're hearing this song, 1 2 Freddy's coming for you. Now I think it was good that they kept the whole, he is a child molester down, because all they really did was show wee lassies with white dresses, maybe driving about in a wee tricycle and all that, or singing that song, playing skip ropes and all that, um, which was just freaky enough. There's a lot of Freddy movies that I like, no a huge amount of them, because some of them are just rubbish and they've just been quickly made because the first one's done so well, and it's clearly just to make some money. But I really enjoyed the third one because the third one was called Dream Warriors, and it was just basically, I think they were the last of the Elm Street kids, they called them, and they were all in there, and everybody thought they were nuts because they were the ones that were having these dreams. They were giving them these tablets that were stopping them dreaming, um, and basically they then worked out that they could fight against them by using their characters in their dreams. When they were dreaming that one dreamt that he was a wizard because he loved games, like the kind of role playing games, and he was really good at it. And he was in a wheelchair, but he could walk, and he was a wizard. And then you had another lassie who was an ex drug addict, and she was like this punk rocker style lassie who was really cool, could fight with two knives and all that kind. So they all had their own power, and there was a guy that couldn't speak, but he had a loud voice in his dreams, and he could speak. And then you had this big bulky guy who basically was really strong. So it was really good because it was kind of like a kind of horror movie, superhero movie where they actually had a chance because they had something to fight against them. And also they had Patricia Arquette, and I like Patricia Arquette. She's always a good actress. She's the best screamer I've ever heard. You know, her scream, talk about scream queens, we should begin that crown to Patricia Arquette as well. She can scream nae bother. Um I liked that one, and I liked New Nightmare because it was completely different. It was an aspect of um basically all the characters that played the characters in the movie, like Nancy, Robert Englund. Well, Nancy's really Heather. Robert Englund plays Freddy Krueger. They're all playing themselves. So they are, and Freddy Krueger becomes real and starts going about and killing everybody and stuff like that. And it's really, really good because it's a different kind of concept. Um, and it's really, really weird how many people do love Freddy Krueger, considering that he is, you know, a child killer and stuff like that. But we know it's no real. We know it's a character, and it's just a character you can't help but love because he plays him so, so well. And you're scared. You're scared. Soon as you see him, you're scared. And the stuff that he says as well, and the taunting and everything, half of them probably just wish you would just get it their way and kill them anyway because the taunting's bad enough. So it's it's a movie that I have always loved. For the first time that I seen it, it was something different, and I loved the character. So when I heard that they were making a remake, I was really quite excited for it. I was like, "Oh, this is good, a remake." And then I heard Robert Englund wasn't playing Freddy Krueger. All right, so it's a guy called Jackie L. Haley who's played Freddy Krueger in this, and it was remade in 2010. It had a budget of 35 million, so it's quite a big budget. So it was compared to the 1.8 million for the original, but then again, it's 2010 now. And it made 115.6 million, but I don't know how because I hated this remake. And this is my personal opinion, guys. Some of you might watched it and went, "Oh, I thought that was quite good." Blah blah blah. That's fine. That's your opinion. You might not even agree with my list of two movies that I enjoy. Um, but this is my personal opinion on it. I just I just didn't feel this guy was a good Freddy Krueger, and I think no character apart from Robert Englund can play Freddy Krueger, and that's just me. That's just me personally. It's I suppose it's like somebody coming to me and saying Xena Warrior Princess is coming back, but Lucy Lawless and Rennie O'Connor are not going to play Xena and Gabrielle. I'd be like, no, no watching it then. I'm not watching it because they're the only people that I know who can play their characters, and that would be it for me. And that's it. It's like when they remade Charmed. No, it never did well because it didn't have the characters that we fell in love with when we first watched it. And that's just how some people were, and that's just how I was with this guy playing Freddy Krueger. He had like a deep voice, and the burns looked good. And don't get me wrong, everything was like right in that terms. The hat, and they never changed anything like that. The glove, they never changed anything like that. But the banter, the tormenting, it wasn't there. It wasn't like what Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger was like. It was just he laughed a lot, but it was more like a snigger. He had this kind of deep laugh. And then they kill the dog. I'm not happy with this, guys. But really? Can we stop killing animals in horror movies? It doesn't make it scary. It doesn't make it scary. It just upsets us. And nobody wants to be upset watching a horror movie. You want to be scared, and it's no scary. It's annoying. Stop killing animals in horror movies. I know it's no real, but it's really no needed. So stop it. So anyway, um, so yeah, get a 5.2 rate on IMDb. Um, The original got a 7.5 on IMDb. So it did. So basically, you've got your characters. You do have a Nancy in it, but it's a completely different type of Nancy for the Nancy in the first one. It's also the only character that's got the same name. And she is meant to be that Nancy because there's a scene where in the bath, like the bath scene where she falls asleep and the hand comes up and then someone wakes her up and she's like, oh, you know what I mean? And thought it was a dream. The hand goes back down again. So it is meant to be. So we have these characters with different names, but obviously they're meant to be the other characters. So we have a Nancy, we have a Quentin, um, who I think is meant to kind of be like a Glenn, but they're no going out. Nancy and Quentin are not dating. Um, but I think they do like each other. But they're just this Nancy seems very awkward, more awkward than what the original Nancy is. Even right through to the end, there doesn't seem a time where, and I actually didn't think that she was the person. Same as what I did with Nancy, I didn't think she was the actual star of the show that she was going to survive at the end, um, because she just seemed so awkward. She was also an artist. She drew all the time, um, and she listened to music a lot, and it was just to try and keep her awake when she started having the dreams and all that kind of stuff. You have Chris, who's a lassie, guys. She's called Chrissy, but they call her Chris, and she's like your Tina. And you have Jesse, who I don't know. That wasn't a character at all, but he's the first one to die. He um she thinks he kills himself in front of Chris in a cafe, and he looks terrible. He looks like he's no sleep, and he tries to tell her about his dream, and he tells her about Freddy Krueger. Um, and then he falls asleep at the table just for a second. She thinks he's awake, but he's no, and gets his throat slit, and she thinks he's slit his own throat because he's actually holding his horn, but he's actually trying to stop him. But it looks like to her, because also she can see Freddy Krueger, that he slit his own throat, so they think he commits suicide. And then you have Dean, and Dean's kind of like Rod, the bad boy kind of type of person. Um, so yeah, so then obviously Chris is next. She starts having the dreams because obviously he's passed it on to her by telling her about this, and I think it has Bruno the all kind of. She starts talking about it, and they all start saying that they've had a dream about this same person. I don't know, blah blah. Um, same old sort of thing. But what I didn't like about this movie is they did decide to emphasize that he was a child molester, and it was them that he had actually molested. to the point where they had like photographs and they found photographs and stuff. They found this secret room in the school because he was a janitor in the school. And that's why the family killed him. And I thought there wasn't any really need for that because they didn't do that in the original. They didn't have to do it in the original because it was scary enough knowing it was a child killer. Just having the wee hints was good enough, and they didn't need to do that, but they decided to do it. And yep. So this was directed by Samuel Bayer, which I don't know anything that Samuel Bayer's ever done before. But he never done a good job with this. Personally, to me, he didn't do a good job with this. Um, but I don't think, unless they had Robert Englund to play this part anyway, it probably wouldn't have mattered. It probably wouldn't have mattered. Anyway, they could have just scripted some stuff better. I think they could have just took a lot of that stuff out, because it was just more depressing than anything. And because there was no banter, good banter for him to kind of, you know. And I think the only part that I really thought, oh, I saw a wee bit of Freddy Krueger in him for Robert Englund was when he said to one guy, "Why are you screaming yet? I've no cut you," and that was about it. And that was it. That was it. Um, so yeah, I wasn't a fan of the remake, as you can tell. Um, and it was just kind of the same stuff, obviously, because it was 2010 it was made. It was, energy drinks and stuff like that they were drinking. And I think they actually went to the point where they were injecting themselves with something. Adrenaline? Is it adrenaline? Something dangerous anyway. To keep them awake. If I remember correctly. Aye. And these kids, apparently, every single one of them had blocked this out their mind about this guy and what he'd done. And I think Nancy's mum, she's a doctor. Um, I don't know if she's a therapist or something. Because I know in the original, the mum's an alcoholic now, and I think that's guilt for killing Freddy Krueger, even because she feels as though they did things the wrong way. Um, and she's starting to freak out that her daughter's asking her who's Freddy Krueger, and she gives her the hat, and she's like, "I pulled this out my dream," and the mum's still like, "I'm not saying nothing," and obviously Nancy's dad in the original was a lieutenant, and he was part of it as well, so he was, because later on in all the movies we find out the more you speak about Freddy Krueger, the more power he gets. That's why in Freddy versus Jason they were um trying to get people to stop talking about him because then he didn't have enough power. That's why he sent Jason Voorhees to Elm Street to start killing people, but by pretending to be his mum. Um, so people would start thinking that he was back, and they would all start talking about him again, and he would get his powers back to be able to go back. So this is kind of the gist of where it starts. They don't want them all to remember who he is because that's what kind of gives him his power. So Um, for the remake, I'm giving it a no. No, wasn't for me. Which is a shame. I mean, they could have made it so much better. Um, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be. And I hope, in 10 years' time or whatever, they don't decide to do it again, or 5 years or whatever, they don't decide. Let's try it again because it's no gonna work if you haven't get Robert Englund playing the part, just don't bother. There's just certain people who can't do it, apart from the original. So don't, you know. So the next movie that I'm going to talk about, guys, is The Evil Dead. I love The Evil Dead. I actually love The Evil Dead 2 more than anything, but I have to speak about The Evil Dead because the remake is on the original Evil Dead. It was made in 1983. It had a budget of $350,000. It ended up making $29.4 million worldwide, which is really quite good. It had a 7.5 rating on IMDb. And it was done by Sam Raimi, as we all know. And um, this movie was this movie's so good. I actually have the box set of this movie. Um, I absolutely love this movie. Um, I like it because I watched a making of it and see all the people who were involved in it. Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, Robert Taper. They all seemed very like a family unit. They weren't just like, oh, we're going to make this movie, make our money, and then bounce. They took chances with this movie because they all put money in that they didn't really have and they didn't know how well this movie was going to do. But they all trusted each other and they all took a chance. Now, I don't know if many people know this, but Sam Raimi and Robert Taper actually did Xena Warrior Princess together. They were the creator. They did that together. And this is why you'll see certain characters in different things that you see all the time. So, for instance, you've got Xena Warrior Princess, you've got Autolycus King of Thieves, who's Bruce Campbell. You've got Ted Raimi, who's Sam Raimi's brother, who plays Joxer. And then in Evil Dead 2, you've got Ted Raimi, who plays the witch in a big fat suit underneath the cellar. In the second one, you've got Ash versus Evil Dead. You've got Lucy Lawless, who plays Xena Warrior Princess, in that playing Ruby. So they all kind of intertwine. They all have, and I only just realised researching these that Sam Raimi did um the Oz movie, the newer version, and he even gave the lassie Shelley, who's in the original, a part in that as well. And obviously Bruce Campbell's in that as well. Um, and Ted Raimi's in that as well. So he gives people, wee parts. It's like a family, always tries to keep the same kind of actors and stuff like that, even if it's giving them small parts. So it's a kind of they're kind of like a wee family unit, and you can tell they put a lot of love into this movie. They did new things that I had never seen before, like the camera of it going through the woods and that noise. Ooh, and it's just going through the bushes and it's going so fast and then it's bursting into the cabin, but it's quickly going left and right through all the doors. And I'm like, how did they do that? That is just amazing. It's never been done before. I'd never ever seen that in a movie before, and it was amazing. And it was scary because you were like, when you see him running through the forest and it's right behind him, and you're like, ah. Or when Shelley's at the window and you basically see it coming through the woods, heading right to the window, then you hear the window smashing and then her disappearing. Um, so it's really good. So anyway, just the story at Evil Dead. So basically, you have these people driving in a car. Which, by the way, guy, that car is Sam Raimi's car, and he has it in every single movie he's ever made. Every single movie. It's even in Ash versus Evil Dead. Any movie that he's made, that car will be in that movie somewhere. It's even in Spider Man. So it is. It's Uncle Ben's car in Spider Man. Wee tip for you. So, anyway, they're driving to this cabin that's apparently abandoned, to have like a weekend away. Now, don't ask me why you would want to go into an abandoned cabin somewhere. I don't know. I wouldn't go to an abandoned cabin just in case somebody suddenly turned up and told me to beat it. But anyway, your characters, you've got Ash, who's played by Bruce Campbell. You have Cheryl, who is his sister. You've got Linda, who is Ash's girlfriend. You have Scott, who is their friend, and then you have Shelley, who is Scott's girlfriend. So these are your main characters for the movie. They go to the cabin, and straight away, Cheryl, Ash's sister, is getting really bad vibes. She's kind of like, there's something no right about this cabin. It's no right. No, no, something's no right. So Um, they're making their dinner. They're all sitting down in the basement blows opened and they all get a fright because they're all sitting laughing about something. I think they're laughing at Cheryl actually because she's saying something's not right about the house and they're all like, ooh, and all that kind of stuff. Um, and they go down and they find the Necronomicon. They find the big knife. It's got like the skeleton handle in it, which you don't actually see a lot, but that's about until part two. And then shotgun, a gun. Um, a tape recorder. They find a tape recorder as well, and Ash plays tape recorder. Uh, and meanwhile, while they're playing it, the tape recorder is talking about an incantation for the book of the Necronomicon and starts reading it out. And Cheryl's like, "Turn it off, turn it off, turn it off." No, in that Scottish accent, I promise. And freaks out, and then um, yeah, things don't go well after that. So anyway, everything's calmed down, and she's sitting drawing, and um, basically, she's drawing a clock. It's up in the cabin, and something takes over her arm, and she's trying to draw, and she starts ripping through the paper, and she's doing all of this, and she can tell she can't control her hand, and she draws like this book with a face in it, which is obviously an Economicon, and she freaks out, and she runs out in the woods in the dark. I don't know why. Um, and the only thing that I can say, guys, if you've seen Evil Dead, you know what I'm talking about. She's attacked by the trees. And that's the only thing that I can say. But if you have seen The Evil Dead, you will know what I'm talking about. It was a very weird scene. Um, and I'm not sure why they put it in, but it's there. And so she finally gets loose and makes her way back to the cabin, and Ash finds her and brings her back in. They put her to bed. Linda's making sure she's fine. She's like she's sleeping. And then things don't go well for there. Cheryl becomes a deadite, starts freaking out, starts talking and saying all these weird things like you'll be dead by dawn, all that kind of stuff that deadites say. And yep. Um they throw her down the basement and they chain it up. Um Now, um as time goes by, the famous words, I can't remember, I think it's Shelley that says it. What happened to your eyes? What happened to your eyes? Now, they contact lenses that they remember watching the making of The Evil Dead. They said that they were terrible to wear. They were pure white and they had basically just put a wee pinhole through so they could see at them because they couldn't see. So they had a tiny wee pinhole to be able to actually see where they were going. And that's why you were finding, say, for instance, in Evil Dead 2 as well, that they were, when they were stumbling in, I think there's a scene where one guy gets taken there and he's punching holes to try and get into the house. And then when he gets into the house, he kind of stumbles in. It's because they couldn't see. They had so many accidents falling there and all that stuff because they couldn't see. And they said the contact lenses really irritated their eyes as well. Um, but as time went by, Cheryl didn't even look like Cheryl anymore. She looked like some old witch. I don't know if they were just applying more makeup on her each time, but when she started, she was like kind of more ginger haired than what I am because I'm more red and she was more ginger. And she's quite a thin character. When they threw her down there, she completely changed. Her hair was like curly and grey, and her eyes were obviously white, and she just looked like her flesh was just like decaying. Um, but she kept giggling, she kept going, hee, all that kind of stuff, which was freaking them out, and your wee fingers kept all coming out all the time, and she just kept banging, trying to push it up and telling them to let her out, and it was quite freaky. You were kind of like, oh my god. Um, And it was such a good horror movie. So they were all kind of like, what do we do? And I think before she went down there, they kicked her down there. She actually she stabbed Linda in the leg with a pencil, and that was sore seeing that. I was like, oh, so that then affected Linda, and she became a deadite. So obviously Linda is Ash's girlfriend, and he had just given her a lovely necklace as well. That was like a monocle. It was like grey necklace, and it was like a monocle. Um, and basically, she became infected next, and she was really freaky because she had like a soft voice, and she was singing, and she was doing all this, and she was sitting, and it was really kind of scary. And he, they looked like they'd put her as a blusher on her and stuff like that, and she just looked pure freaky. Her hair was like pure mental and curly, and I was like, "Oh my god, it was quite scary." But even then, I hadn't really seen Bruce Campbell in anything before, and I had no idea that Bruce Campbell was the main character in this either. Because it was always Scott that was kind of jumping in and doing thing. It had to be Scott that had to take the axe off him and kill Shelley, because Shelley got taken there when it came through the window, and Ash was just like, what did we do? We just killed a friend. We just chopped Shelley up into little pieces, and Scott was like, "That's not Shelley. That was the Shelley." So anyway, they all basically get taken there, and the only survivor is Ash, who only survives because he's getting hit um with a crowbar by Linda, who is still mental, and Scott as well, and his sister. They're all kind of crawling up his body trying to get to him, and he uses the necklace that he'd give Linda to pull the Necronomicon, throws it in the fire, and then they all start melting, but they all like explode right into his face, and I'm like, oh my god! And but the effects even back then that they had did for this was like amazing. It was like so good. You could probably go back and look at it now and be like, oh my god, that looks terrible. It's off one off her face. You can see it, but back then it was brilliant. It's still an enjoyable movie to watch now. So let's go into the remake of The Evil Dead. The remake was made in 2013. It was done by Fede Alvarez, was the director. I think he had Sam Raimi's blessing to make this, because Sam Raimi was planning to do this but didn't really know where to go with it. So he went to him and was like, "Look, if you're not going to make this movie, I'm going to make this movie." So he was like, "You make this movie." So they basically gave him his blessing, and he became the producer of it. Um, so basically, it has brand new characters. There is no Ash in it, and I'm quite glad of that. I thought I would be quite annoyed, but like Freddy Krueger, no one else can play Ash Williams apart from Bruce Campbell, and it's true. You can't get somebody. I mean, Bruce Campbell is the iconic man with a chin. You know what I mean? And he nobody else could play this part. So I'm glad that they didn't force somebody else to be an Ash Williams. It didn't need it. It really didn't. And I also like the fact that they changed the story to the point where it made more sense that they were going to this cabin. So you've got Mia, and Mia is a lassie who's addicted to cocaine. And the reason that they're going to this cabin is so she can go cold turkey, which makes more sense. A reason to go out in the middle of nowhere, with your friends. And also, her and her brother David, their mum owned the cabin, so the cabin is theirs. So they know they're not going to be disturbed and all that kind of stuff. So they go up to the cabin, and she's not seen her brother for a while because she was looking after her mum. And they mentioned the mum having mental health issues, but there's a scene where Maya is basically saying to him that the mum kept calling her David for a while, a couple of months before she died. So I don't know if it was dementia that she had, and he couldn't handle it. So he basically left. And he left his younger sister to deal with it by herself. So Maya's obviously shocked when he turns up and was like, wow, you turned up, you know. Um, and she draws like Cheryl. So she's kind of like the Cheryl, and David is like the Ash um, in the movie. And she draws just like what Cheryl did. She's drawing the cabin, and that's when he comes round, and she's like, "Oh wow, you showed up," and she's surprised, and he gives her the necklace. So instead of it being a Linda, he gives it to her, and it's the same type of necklace, except it's made of wood. It's a monocle, but it's made of wood, and I'm like, "Oh, it's nice they've at least put that in it," you know. So you have Eric, who's their friend, but who's a wee bit bitter with David because they were good friends, and then obviously David's just pissed off somewhere and lost touch, so he's not too happy. And then you've got Olivia. Olivia is a nurse, and she's been a friend, and she's basically just going to be there to make sure Maya's all right during this cold turkey, to sedate her and all that when she needs it, and just make sure that she's blood pressure and all that's fine, just doing what nurses do, right? So, and then we have Natalie, and Natalie is David's girlfriend. This is the first time that she's meeting all of them, all his friends and stuff like that. So, that's your crew, and the dog. We have a dog, guys. You know what I'm going to say. The dog dies, and this, I don't know. You need to stop this. People who make horror movies, we don't need it. We don't need it. Chuck it. No need. That's all I'm going to say in that matter. So anyway, they're in the cabin, and they're no long in, and she's freaking out already, and they think she's freaking out because she's like gone cold turkey, and she keeps saying the place smells and smells like somebody's died, and she's like, "How can you no smell that?" But then the dog smells it and pulls away the rug that's hiding the basement door, which is covered in blood. And they go down there, and it's full of dead cats. And at the beginning of the movie, you kind of see a ritual happening underneath a basement, um, where some young lassie has clearly been taken by the Necronomicon, and they are trying to save her soul. Did that, and these people, and they needed all the dead cats for it. I don't know. They left them there anyway, but they also left the book, which is in a black bag wrapped in barbed wire, along with a shotgun and a few shot shells. Um, and they take it all upstairs, and straight away Maya's like, "You should have left that odd in there. You shouldn't have touched it." You know what I mean? Um, So Eric's obviously more curious than anybody, so he goes into the room and he starts opening it and all that. And the book clearly, when he opens it, it's still made by like flesh. You can see it's all sewn together, but it's not got like the face in it, like the original Necronomicon. And when he's opening it, it's got everything written in it. Don't read for this book. Get rid of this book. Blah blah. Don't say the words. And he ignores every single thing that's written in the book. And even the actual words, the incantation, has been scored away so nobody can read it. But him being a smart arse decides to get a bit of paper and a pencil and does that, kind of sketching thing, which then he can, which then he can read the words, and then reads the words. So when he reads the words, obviously Maya's not doing well because of the cold turkey thing, and she's walking in circles outside in the rain. He reads the words, and she sees this horrible face and vomits, and it's a face like hers, but it's like horrible. And then she looks in the woods, and she sees somebody that looks like her. So she's like, "I'm off," which I would probably be like the same, but they all think she's just trying to go back so she can get cocaine because she's addicted. And she's like, "Look, I'll do this anywhere else, but I don't want to do this here. There's just something no right happening here." And because they had a word with David and told David that while he wasn't about, that she actually OD'd and she died for a while, they had to bring her back. He takes their side and says, "We can't let you go because I can't lose you." So she just like breaks the necklace up, and throws it down, grabs the car keys without anybody seeing, and goes out and steals the car, and then crashes it because she sees that thing again that looks like her and ends up in the water. Now, while she's trying to get out of the water and she's trying to get back, and she's going, "What am I doing? What am I doing?" And she's saying that while she's in the car before she crashes. Um, I'm just going to say this again, guys. She gets attacked by the woods. Now, this was a wee bit different because apparently Fede Alvarez did not want this scene in this movie. He said that he didn't feel it was necessary, but a producer did want it in the movie, and I think that producer was Sam Raimi, and he says if it was in the original, it had to be in this movie. So he then obviously put it in the movie, but he did it a wee bit different from what it was done before. Um, I probably think it probably didn't need to be in the movie, to be honest, but hey ho, who am I? So yep. Anyway, um, basically they find her and she gets back to the cabin, and Olivia makes sure she's all right, and David goes in to speak to her, and she is like, "You have to get me out of here." And he's just, I think he just thinks that it's because she's gone cold turkey, and he doesn't believe anything that she's saying. So he's pure like, everything will be all right. Don't worry about it. Everything will be all right. Um, and then when he leaves, she looks in the mirror and that thing's sitting there laughing at her that looks like her. And I'm like, oh my god. Um, so it was quite scary. It was really well done. This movie. They changed a lot of things, but for the better. Um, Also, the story of what I'm going to tell you next is a true story. Me and my sister actually went to the pictures to see this. And my sister likes horror movies, but she doesn't like any horror movies. It's like jumpy out stuff. She'll watch it, but she'll either bring a jacket, or if she's in the house, she'll use a cushion to hide behind. And she doesn't like things that are gross, things that will gross her out. So I was kind of like, I don't know, sure you're going to like this movie then, because if you've seen the original Evil Dead, you know what to expect. And she was like, no, I mean it'll be fine. And I'm like, right, okay. So we went to see it, and this scene came up, which is the next scene, um, where Maya comes out and she's got a shotgun in her hand, and you can clearly tell she's been taken there. And she says all this weird stuff in this weird voice, which, by the way, is the lassie who plays Cheryl in the original who did the voiceover for that, because she did it in the original and she did it so well they asked her to do like the dead out voice, which I thought was good touch. So she's all like, "You're all going to die tonight," blah blah blah, and they're all trying to get the gun off her. So finally, they get the gun off her. I think she does shoot somebody with it. Can't remember. She does shoot somebody. I think it's David. Um, and basically, uh, she gets attacked by Olivia. I'm sitting in the cinema and I'm eating popcorn, and Maya pukes all this stuff into Maya's mouth and face and everything, and then she throws her down the basement. Um, and Eric quickly looks at, and I turns at my sister and I goes, "Do you want some popcorn?" And she is chalk white. And my sister is a redhead, like a real redhead, so she's paler than me naturally. And I'm like, "Are you alright?" And she's like, "I feel a bit sick." And I'm like, "Don't be sick in the pictures." And she's like, "Oh, that was gross." And I'm like, "I told you that this is what it's going to be like. Because if they're going to, follow the original, and obviously it's 2013 then, so, things are more real looking." So anyway, um, Olivia goes to get a shot for Maya. Or, no, it's no, tell a lie. She goes to get something for whoever was shot to help with them the pain. And it was so good how they done it. She's washing her face first to get all of that stuff off, and the mirror slowly closes and she sees like her face, but she sees it as in her cheeks are missing or her skin. So it's kind of like a what I would call a Glasgow kiss. It's slit sort of thing. And she gets a fright, but then she just kind of hangs it off and she gets the syringe, fills it up. She walks, but then she goes as if she was suddenly stopped by a force. It was just sudden, and she didn't walk. And then she started peeing herself, which I didn't understand why that needed to be in it, but anywho. And she drops the syringe, and then it cuts to another scene. So then Eric's like, "Where is she?" And I feel so sorry for Eric in this movie. And I don't know if Eric got the worst in this movie was because he was the one that actually said the incantation. So anyway, he goes to find her, and all you hear is, and you're like, "That, what the hell?" And he's like, "Olivia, what are you doing?" And he pulls the curtain, and she's using a bit of the mirror, and she's cutting off her cheek, her other cheek. And I'm like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And it looked so real, and it was just like pure shock factor. So he's like, "What have you done? What have you done?" And she starts getting up and she stabs him in the shoulder. He slips on the bit of cheek that she that she wanted to cut off, hits his head off the toilet bowl, and then she starts stabbing him with a syringe. And I felt so sorry. It was like in his hand, it was like everywhere, through his glasses. So he's like that, pulling the needle out, and I'm like, oh my god. I'm looking at my sister. She's getting whiter and whiter as time goes by. And I'm like, soon she'll be like Casper and see through, and I no see her. So it really had shock factor. It really showed you everything. It was like the scene where um Natalie was tricked to go downstairs with Maya, um because Deadites seem to pretend a lot that they're alright and then suddenly change just to get you. So anyway, um Maya gets away from her. She gets away from Maya anyway eventually, but it's too late, she's affected. And it's going up her arm. So what does she do? She gets the electric saw that cuts meat and bread and starts cutting off her arm. And it blows all the electrics. And the funniest bit ever was when the two guys run in to find out what's happening, and her arm's hanging by a wee tiny bit of skin, flesh left. And she's like, "I feel so much better." And I'm like, "Oh my god. Oh my god." So, um, obviously, guys, I'm telling you about this because I will not be able to show you this on YouTube, but um, so obviously they're like trying to stop her bleeding. So they think she's all right because obviously she's cut the arm off, and she's not all right. She's not all right. So then obviously she starts hitting them with crowbars. She's got a nail gun that she's shot into her own face, and she starts shooting all of them. That poor guy, Eric, he gets shot. She breaks his horn in two with a crowbar, sticks it in him. I'm like, this guy is really not having a good day whatsoever. So anyway, guys, basically there's nobody really left in apart from Maya, who's still a deadite, and David. So meanwhile, you're like, well, David's obviously going to be the one to survive. He's going to have to kill his sister, and then blah, blah, blah is going to be the end. But this is where it gets really good because that's not what happens at all. He ends up killing his sister, but bringing her back with like a defibrillator that he makes himself. So technically, she's dead. So her soul can't go to hell because then he brings her back and she comes back as normal. So, and he was going to burn the house with her in it, but he kept looking at pictures of her and the mum and them together, and he just couldn't do it. So he buries her alive with a bag in her head, and she's saying all these horrible things to him because obviously, it's no her, it's the deadite speaking. At first she pretends just to be Maya, and then she realizes he's not listening. She starts going, "It's your fault about mum," and all that sort of stuff. So he brings her back, and at first he doesn't think he succeeded, so he walks away, and then suddenly she gets up, but she's not got a burn or anything. It's like she's completely healed for anything that's ever happened. Um, because she was in the shower earlier on and it was burning her face. Because apparently the book needs 5 souls and there's 5 different ways. And Olivia cutting her face was one of the ways. Her burning her face was one of the ways. Blah blah blah. Anyway, it needs 5 human souls to be able to resurrect. So far, Eric's gone, Olivia's gone, Natalie's gone, and he killed Maya, so Maya's counted even though he brought her back. So if David goes or Maya goes, then we're in trouble. So basically, he's like, I'm going to burn the house, and she's like, don't go back in there. And he kind of tricks her and goes in there and sacrifices himself and blows up the house with him in it. But because he's done that, it means that they've resurrected this thing. So it starts raining blood, and she has to fight this horrible looking thing that kind of looks like her. And it's a real battle. I mean, it's a real battle. And she wins, and at the end, yeah, she's lost an arm. And um, the good thing is when she kills it with a chainsaw, which is, I suppose, I think a kind of Bruce Campbell and Ash sort of thing. Um, so this movie was so good, guys. Even though it did things differently, it did it right. It changed things for the right reasons, and I really enjoyed it. It was really good. It was like a new take to it. It was a 17 million budget, and it ended up making 97 million pounds. And they're talking about doing a part two for it. I don't know if it's still going to have Maya in it. There's nobody else left in it anyway. But I heard that they're going to do it for the third one, the Army of Darkness, thrown back into time. So I really hope they do that at some point, and I hope they do it right. So basically, I'm giving the Evil Dead remake a fan dabby dozy because it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I would be happy if that Fede Alvarez directs the next one, if it's no Sam Raimi, because it was really, really good. He did everything right. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I know it was long, but I wanted to kind of get my points through about what I liked and what I didn't like. And if obviously you haven't seen the movies before, explain the things that I did like and I didn't like. Um, if you did like it, I can do many of these. I might just maybe pick one movie if I'm going into in depth with it that will not take such a long video, but I threw in two. But there's a lot of horror movies, as you know, that I have seen and I love and stuff like that, and remakes that I maybe be happy with or not be happy with. So guys, if you enjoy, please leave a like, leave a comment, and if you enjoy my content, subscribe, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye.